One of the most painful experiences for someone living with a narcissistic wife is the slow and quiet birth of self-doubt. At first, it doesn't appear obvious. It begins with small moments. Your feelings dismissed, your concerns mocked, your memory of events subtly challenged. You say something happened one way, and she insists it happened another. Over time, these repeated contradictions begin to erode your certainty about your own perception of reality. Carl Jung often spoke about the importance of trusting one's inner voice, the quiet psychological compass that tells us what is real and what is not. But in a narcissistic dynamic, that compass is constantly attacked. The victim begins to question not just specific situations, but their own judgment as a whole. You start asking yourself questions that slowly weaken your sense of self. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I really am the problem. This is how control quietly establishes itself, not through force, but through confusion. When a person no longer trusts their own mind, they become easier to manipulate, easier to silence, and easier to dominate. The tragedy is that the victim often believes the lie for far too long. And the moment you begin to doubt your own reality is the moment you must pause and ask yourself a dangerous but necessary question. Who benefits from my confusion? Another painful reality that slowly emerges in such relationships is emotional isolation. A person may still be physically present in the marriage, sharing the same home, the same routines, perhaps even the same conversations, but emotionally they are completely alone. And this form of loneliness is far heavier than ordinary solitude. In healthy relationships, two people become witnesses to each other's inner world. They listen, they acknowledge, and in doing so they affirm the other person's existence. But within a narcissistic dynamic, that recognition disappears. Your emotions are dismissed, minimized, or turned against you. When you express hurt, you are called dramatic. When you express concern, you are accused of complaining. Slowly, the message becomes clear: your feelings have no place here. Carl Jung understood that human beings require psychological recognition. We need to feel seen, understood, and emotionally mirrored by those closest to us. Without that recognition, something profound begins to wither inside the psyche. The victim may begin to withdraw, speaking less, sharing less, revealing less of themselves simply to avoid rejection or ridicule. And so a strange paradox forms. You are in a relationship, yet you feel completely unseen. When your voice is consistently ignored, silence begins to feel safer than honesty. And that is the moment a relationship stops being a partnership and starts becoming a prison. As time goes on, another subtle but exhausting feeling begins to dominate the victim's life. The constant sensation of walking on eggshells. Nothing feels stable anymore. Ordinary conversations become potential traps. Simple disagreements turn into emotional battles. And the smallest mistake can suddenly provoke anger, blame, or cold silence. In such an environment, the victim becomes hyper, aware of every word, every tone, every reaction. You begin calculating your sentences before speaking. You rehearse explanations in your mind. You try to predict moods, anticipate triggers, and avoid anything that might ignite conflict. What should be a place of emotional safety slowly transforms into a psychological minefield. Carl Jung believed that the psyche seeks balance and stability. But when a person lives in a constant state of emotional unpredictability, the mind adapts by entering a form of quiet survival mode. Instead of expressing authenticity, the victim begins managing the atmosphere, sacrificing honesty simply to keep the peace. Over time, this constant vigilance drains a person's spirit. The energy that should be used for growth, creativity, and self-development becomes consumed by emotional self-protection. And when a person must carefully measure every word just to avoid conflict, the relationship is no longer built on trust. It is built on fear. Over time, something even more troubling begins to occur. It is not just your peace that disappears, but your sense of identity. At the beginning of the relationship, you likely had clear opinions, personal interests, and a natural way of expressing yourself. But within a narcissistic dynamic, those parts of you slowly begin to fade. It rarely happens all at once. Instead, it unfolds through small adjustments. You stop sharing certain thoughts because they lead to arguments. You abandon hobbies because they are criticized or belittled. You silence opinions because they are constantly dismissed. Little by little, you reshape yourself, not because you truly want to, but because it feels like the only way to maintain stability. Carl Jung spoke deeply about the importance of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Yet, in a relationship dominated by narcissism, this process is reversed. Instead of growing into yourself, you begin shrinking away from who you once were. Eventually, you may look at your life and realize something unsettling. You no longer recognize the person you've become. The dreams that once motivated you feel distant, your voice feels weaker, and your authentic self feels buried beneath years of adaptation. And when a relationship slowly erases who you are, the most important question becomes unavoidable. How much of yourself are you willing to lose just to keep the peace? At a certain point, many victims begin to feel something even heavier than confusion or loneliness, the feeling of being trapped, not necessarily by physical barriers, but by invisible psychological chains that slowly tighten over time. The relationship may have begun with hope and commitment, but now it feels like a place you cannot easily leave. Part of this trap is built through manipulation. The narcissistic partner may use guilt, blame, or emotional pressure to keep control. If you consider stepping away, you may be accused of betrayal, selfishness, or destroying the family. And over time, these accusations begin to weigh heavily on the mind. You start questioning whether leaving would truly make you the villain in the story. Carl Jung often spoke about how the psyche can become imprisoned by illusions, beliefs that feel real but are quietly constructed by fear and conditioning. In this situation, the victim may begin to believe that there is no path forward, that enduring the pain is simply their responsibility. Yet this belief is precisely what sustains the trap. When a person convinces themselves that escape is impossible, they stop searching for the door. And the moment you stop believing that change is possible, is the moment the prison becomes permanent. Unless you dare to question the walls around you. Perhaps the most painful part of this experience is the silence that surrounds it. From the outside, everything may appear normal. The narcissistic partner often presents a very different image to the world. Charming, confident, even admirable. Friends, relatives, and colleagues may see someone who seems supportive and strong. And because of that carefully maintained image, the victim's suffering becomes almost invisible. When the victim tries to explain what is really happening, they are often met with disbelief or confusion. People might say, "She seems so kind," or "Maybe you're exaggerating." These responses, though sometimes unintentional, deepen the victim's isolation. The pain is not only endured privately, it is also quietly dismissed. Carl Jung understood that the human psyche suffers deeply when truth cannot be expressed. When a person's reality is constantly denied or misunderstood, they begin to feel as if their inner world has no witness. And without a witness, suffering becomes heavier to carry. This is why many victims remain silent for years, carrying emotional wounds that no one around them can see. But silence protects the illusion, not the truth. And the moment you begin to speak honestly about what you are experiencing, you take the first step toward reclaiming both your voice and your freedom.